What's your background, Titus?
I'm Trinitarian.
So why you sound like you're upset?
Um, I have a question on the LXX, just basically
Sept-
how,
The
yeah,
Septuagint?
yeah, the Septuagint and how it was transmitted over time. Because
Okay.
when I read the past, like I've read your articles about the angel of the Lord,
Hmm.
but most of it is based on the Hebrew. But
No,
when I,
not most of it. No, you're confusing. There are a few instances where the Septuagint reads different, like in Isaiah 9:6 or Isaiah 63, verse 9, but not most of it. Meaning, most of the Septuagint, the LXS, agrees with the Masoretic text. If it didn't, how did the early Christians who were using the Septuagint against the Jews prove that the angel of the Lord is a divine person, like Justin Martyr?
um, I wouldn't know. That's my question to you.
Yeah.
Like when I read passages like, because I've used it against Unitarians,
Mhm.
like Judges 2,
Yeah,
but
Judges 2 there, I know. That says, and the Lord said. Yes, I'm aware of that. But my question is, when you said that most of my arguments is based on the English translation of what's called the Hebrew Masoretic text. No, that's not true, because most of the passages we cite are uniform. They're in agreement with the Greek version. In a few instances, there may be variations, but that's what I'm asking you. So let me repeat my question. I'm asking you, if the Septuagint was so widely different, the LXX is the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Old Testament, so that it doesn't furnish ample evidence the angel of the Lord is a divine person who becomes Christ. How did the early Christians who used the Septuagint, like Justin Martyr, prove the angel of the Lord is not a creature but Christ in his preeminent existence?
uh, I wouldn't know. Is there
Ask the
different?
question that's answered, buddy. I just answered by asking the question. That means no, you looked at a few places like Judges 2, 1 of 5, or even they'll go to Isaiah 9, 6, which doesn't help their case, helps your case, because it says the child born is the angel of the great council, or Isaiah 63:9. Yes, there are instances in which there are variations, but those are few in comparison to the plentiful cases where the Greek translation agrees with the Hebrew Old Testament. I'll give you an example. So I don't know who you ran into and who tried to suggest otherwise. So who did you run into, and what was their objection?
So I was debating, the angel of the Lord, right? So
Yeah.
I used your arguments, but I realized that I never really read other renderings other than the Masoretic. So that's when I discovered in Judges 2 and Judges 13, Exodus 23. Like, for example, the
Hold on,
Masoretic would read, "My name is in you," but the LXX would read, "My name is on you," on talking about the angel.
brother. You know you're going to kill me, right? You just made a case based on a Greek preposition that says on, when Greek prepositions have a broad range of meaning. Stuck for all, brother. This is why I usually hesitate to do Q&As, because of comments like this. But I'm going to be patient, brother, because I want Christ to be patient with me. Okay, so let's go here. So in him, on him. So how's it on him? Now let's go with your logic. Let's go with that translation. How was it on him? Was it on his shoulder or on his hair?
The text doesn't say.
So here is the English translation of the Septuagint for my name is on him. So I want to ask you, how's it on him? Is it on his shoulders? Is it on his hair? What does on mean? I know the preposition.
Sorry, I'm not. I don't really know Greek, so
It doesn't matter. You don't know Greek. Answer the question, brother. How can a name be on anyone? What does that mean?
like his authority.
We're not asking about the meaning of the name, because you said the Hebrew says in him, the Greek says on him, as if this is somehow different and affects the meaning of the text. So I'm asking you, what does it mean it's on him?
It's
Come on, think about it.
like I honestly don't know. Please just tell me.
Oh, brother, I ask questions so that you will think about it, so you can understand it, so you won't forget it. Sometimes I answer directly, sometimes I ask questions to get you to think.
Like I know when it like in the Hebrew when it says in him, I know it's talking about like his innate sorry, not innate, but inherent. It's inherent to him, the angel.
And so what does on him mean? It means it's now external to him, so it's floating around somewhere and then he's just attached to it. What does it mean on him?
He beholds the authority.
So when it's in him, then the authority's in him?
Yeah, like he has the ability to exercise the authority.
So if it's on him, he doesn't have the authority? Only if it's in him, he has the authority?
I feel like when it says it's in him, it's a deeper meaning than on. Like it's actually in the
You're not
being.
listening to yourself, bro. That's why I'm going to have to send you Mike Winger. If I translate it as authority, how is authority in anyone? So it's in him. So if I open up his chest, I'll see authority inside his rib cage.
Well, no, I mean like his like the name of Yahweh is in the angel.
So what does it mean to be in him? So if I cut open his chest, I'll see the 4 Hebrew letters inside his rib cage.
No,
See, you're laughing because you see how stupid that sounds, right?
I just don't know how to articulate it, but
No, but you see how stupid it sounds because you're assuming the different prepositions somehow affect the meaning of the text. On or in conveys the same point. On him means it's upon him, meaning he possesses it. In him means he possesses it. He possesses my name. That's all it means.
yeah, I understand that. I'm just
I don't
saying.
think you do because you're not going to tell me, but I think it has a deeper meaning. So deep that Mike Winger is going to love you as one of his subscribers.
No, I mean like I think there was arguments made that like other representatives of God had their name on them, but the angel of the Lord has the name in him. So I thought it was like,
Brother, can you leave now, brother? Because it says Jesus is in me. So does that mean I'm Jesus because he's in me? Yeah, can you leave, brother? Can you go? Just leave. I'm going to give you 5 seconds. Go, brother. Because I don't want to block you. Can you leave? I'm going to count to 5. Go, brother. 1. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So see why I refuse to do these live streams? Right? See why I don't like to do these live streams? Okay, what's your background, Apostolic Kingdom?
Hey Sam, good to talk to you. I'm Armenian Orthodox. How are you?
Okay, I'm fine. So you're Orthodox. Okay, so that means you're okay. All right. So you're not going to manifest.
No, actually, I had a question because I've been intensely studying Christology.
Good.
So I just wanted to see if you wanted to weigh in, please.
Maybe.
Give me some guidance on
Maybe.
like the differences between MIAPHYSITISm, held by the Oriental Communion, versus DYOPHYSITISm,
You
held
hold to MIAPHYSITISM.
largely by everyone else.
Yeah, you hold to MIAPHYSITISm, right, as an Armenian?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so what do you want to know exactly?
Just in terms of like metaphysically the differences, because I've been like dissecting like very nuanced differences, but I just want to know if like
What's the nuanced differences that you've been dissecting?
yeah, so like in terms of the conclusions primarily, like I'm just comparing like the starting point to the results of both metaphysics, but
Okay, go ahead.
specifically
Tell me the results.
yeah, so it's like for miaphysitism, which of course I hold to as an Armenian, it's because it's one composite nature after the union.
Composite nature, obviously, composite means it's not a single nature. Composite means that it is consisting of more than one aspect, right? So we'll say aspect because you don't want to say two natures, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to contrast that and get your weigh in, please, on that. So, MIAPHYSITISM versus DYOPHYSITISm, in which they say two natures, but
Yes.
in a hypostatic union
Hypostatic
after
meaning
the
united to one
union.
person. Yeah. The hypostasis of the Logos has a divine and human nature.
Hmm.
Okay. So what's the conclusion of your research? Because you're asking me about the other position. The other position saying the one hypostasis, meaning the one person, uncreated Logos, has a divine nature and a human nature. So he's not
Hmm.
two persons, right? And it's not a mixture of two natures creating a third one. It's simply one uncreated person who is truly divine and truly human and has the properties of both natures inseparably united in one person.
Correct. And so I just wanted to, because I've been intensely studying both sides of this argument for a long time as of right now, but I just wanted to like really intensely dissect specifically the end result of MIAPHYSITISm, in which like
I ask you
having
what have you arrived at? I'm saying what is the conclusion you've arrived at? So what have you arrived at? I still don't know what you've arrived at.
right. Yeah, so I would still say that MIAPHYSITISm it's more historical and it's doctrinally more pure, and it's more consistent with the Council of Ephesus and the dogmatization of the Christology.
So
So I would
okay.
say it's more consistent and
So are
accurate.
you more consistent with the anti-Nicene fathers, like Justin Martyr and Irenaeus, who describe the generation of the Word as existing within the mind of God, and he wasn't the Son, but he was the Word in the mind of God, and then God begets him out of himself, and that's when he becomes the Son? That's what the Christians taught before Nicaea. So are you consistent with them?
I honestly have not read enough to like formally conclude, but it's just, uh, in terms of Ephesian Christology, I just want to
Okay.
make
Ephesus
sure
comes in
which
431. Just Martyr, Irenaeus,
right.
Tertullian come in the 2nd century. So if you're
Uh,
saying it's more pure and more historical, then you're not historical and pure enough. Because if I go before Nicaea,
mhm.
Justin Martyr, Tertullian, Irenaeus, and others articulated the begetting of the Son in two stages. That the hypostasis, the person of the Son, exists in God as his reason. He wasn't the Son, but God's reason, logos, in his mind. And then when God begot him, meaning summoned him out of himself to then use him to create, that act of begetting is when he became the Son prior to creation. Do you hold to that begetting?
Definitely, I would say no.
Then you're not pure enough. So why'd you stop at Ephesus? Why don't you go back earlier?
Yeah. Well, I certainly have to spend more time studying. I just particularly, Sam, wanted to ask you, like, in terms of the conclusion of MIAPHYSITISm, of saying one composite nature, because the two natures are, of course, compositely one. Is the
Just like Adam and Eve
implication?
are one,
Sorry, can you repeat that? I
just like
wasn't
Adam and Eve are said to be one, no longer two.
correct. One flesh. Yes.
So they're no longer two flesh and two genders.
No longer two, but they are one. Yeah.
So they're not two flesh. So Adam now has female body parts and Eve has male body parts.
No.
So even when you tell me they're no longer two but one, you're not denying that they are two, but they're inseparably united.
Correct. And that's exactly
Well,
the heart of what I wanted to ask you,
and that's
Sam.
the
Is that?
point.
Uh huh.
But I don't think you're getting my point. And I'm not trying to cut you off.
Uh huh.
If you were listening to me, I just told you, you accepted and agreed that there is a thing such as progressive illumination, so that
Hmm.
even though people later on may describe doctrine formulated differently from the generations before them, that doesn't mean they're wrong, and that doesn't mean that they're being unfaithful to tradition. Why do you think I use the example of Justin Martyr and Tertullian? Because I don't know of anyone after Nicaea or Constantinople that articulates the eternal begetting of the Son the way the 2nd century Logos apologists did. Now, no one condemns them as heretics because they weren't. They were proto-Trinitarians. But I'm not aware of anyone after Nicaea and Constantinople that articulates it the way they did. So when you say it's more pure and more historic, you're not pure or historic enough because you're not articulating it the way they did in the 2nd century. But you would tell me, well, things progress in the light of new controversies. It is not a sin to then elaborate and come up with new ways of articulating ancient truths without this meaning that you're less pure or unfaithful to the tradition. That's exactly what the other side will say to the Miaphysites. That's my point.
Right, exactly, and thank you for your answer, Sam. Because I want to increase my knowledge about the Christological councils, of course, even pre-Ephesus, and just really compare and contrast the two Christologies, which are held largely today in
Don't
Christendom.
stay at Ephesus. Go back to the 2nd century. Read how Justin Martyr, Tertullian, Irenaeus. Tertullian is not a father, not because his views on the Trinity were heretical. It's because he ended up following a so-called prophet named Montanus. But Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, they're saints of the church. The way they articulate the Trinity, you wouldn't articulate it the way they did today. That either means you're not pure, you're not faithful, or they're heretics. It's neither. They're not heretics. They are Trinitarians. And you're not a heretic because they didn't have to address and deal with issues and controversies that forced later Christians to articulate the Trinity in more precise and accurate manners, likewise the natures of Christ. So this is why I have no problem with those who are Miaphysites, and that Miaphysites should have no problem with those who come later and want to emphasize the distinction in the natures, not because they think that this somehow makes Christ two persons, but to simply safeguard the fact that there are things that Christ does that as God could not do. For example, God does not sleep, right? Jesus slept.
Correct.
So you can say God slept as a man. God doesn't die, does he?
No, never.
But Jesus died, so he's not God?
No, he did. But of course, in his human nature.
Oh, so now you just distinguish the human nature from the divine nature. But wait, you're not supposed to do that. It's one composite nature.
Right. And so this is exactly getting to my point, Simon, just because I think like contrasting the one composite nature compared to the two natures of DYOPHYSITISM, it just, to me, so I wanted to get to like get your way in once again. It's just, to me, it makes the result of DYOPHYSITISM makes more sense in terms of
The result
that
of
you have two natures in a singular hypostatic union rather than combined without mingling
more
in
sense? You speak
nature.
too fast, brother. I think you're rushing to get to Russia. What makes more sense? You speak too fast.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. No, I'm still, of course, Oriental Orthodox. It just,
Yes.
I was considering the Diophysite Christology, and to me, it seems to make more sense. But I certainly have, of course, a lot more studying and
Now, let
understanding
me
to do.
share some with you what makes more sense to someone who says that Christ is begotten. To me, it makes more sense that Justin Martyr and Tertullian would say that the begetting of the Son is when the Son, who's the Word of God, comes out of God at the moment when God summons his Word to create. And that act of begetting him is when he becomes the Son. But to speak of an eternal, timeless begetting makes no sense to anyone. So why do you hold to the latter, which makes no sense? Why don't you go back to the way they articulated before Nicaea?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right on that point.
Oh, hold on. I can't be absolutely right. Then you'd be going against the Arminian church. No, you're not getting the point. My point, it doesn't matter what makes sense to you or me. We're not the standard. We're not the standard.
Correct. Yeah. And so I
So
want
when you
to.
tell me it makes more sense, I don't care if it makes sense to you, because the Muslims tell me that it makes more sense that Jesus is a man. It makes no sense that he's God being born as a baby and dies. So I don't care when someone tells me. That's the same argument Sijawadi's using, who's now a heretic, because he's using philosophy to say, well, it makes more sense to say Yahweh's name of the Father to ground the nature in the person of the Father so you can maintain monotheism. See, this is the danger when you start making yourself and your mind the standard. It makes more sense to me. Well, then someone else then says, well, it makes more sense to me, Unitarianism or Arianism.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not where we want to go, right?
Yeah, I definitely want to be very careful and certainly want to avoid that. So, that's why I want to be very careful, and I want to get your guidance.
Yeah, my opinion means nothing. So don't worry about my opinion, because I'm not God's gift to the church. I'm not an apostle or a prophet. What I'm saying is, when people try to convince me of one position over against the other by such arguments, I'm not convinced and I'm not impressed. But I don't have a problem with MIAPHYSITES, and I don't have a problem with DYOPHYSITISM. In fact, the church that I'm in, you have to affirm DYOPHYSITISM, but the same church I'm in acknowledges the MIAPHYSITES as true Christians.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
You know why they acknowledge them as true Christians?
Can you actually elaborate why? I'm interested in knowing, please.
Because they understand you may be using different vocabulary, but whether you like it or not, you're coming to the same conclusion, because both positions are affirming Christ is one person. He's truly God, truly human. He's the God-man, God as man, God in man, God who became man. And therefore, the way you articulate it, you're pretty much saying the same thing that the Catholic Church is saying. The only difference would be, which again, I don't think there'd be a difference, because from my understanding, because it's been a while, I haven't watched the series. They talk about one composite will, meaning because the divine nature and the human nature are now so inseparably united in one person, not fused, that will is now a composite will consisting of the divine nature and the human nature. Well, then the other side would say that's why we say two natures, a human will and a divine will, but they are so perfectly, inseparably united in the one person that the human will is completely in perfect subjection to the divine will, because it's a divine person who subjugates his human will to the divine will perfectly. So at the end of the day, if you really listen to each other, believe it or not, you're saying the same thing.
Correct. Yeah, and actually, I certainly have come to that understanding. Sam, I wanted to see if, like, substantially there's any differences, because I do listen to, like, I've consumed a lot of content regarding both sides, and some people say it's just purely semantical. Others say, oh no, it's very substantive. We have two different religions. So I want to be very careful as I approach this.
No, brother, we don't. If you listen carefully, because I've listened to them, I had them on my channel to make their case. What really intrigued me was the fact that they quoted so many saints of the church that would speak of one nature, composite nature, one composite of the union. That intrigued me, but then I understood that though later on they may have emphasized the distinction of the natures, that doesn't mean that's damnable any more than the analogy I gave you of Justin Martyr and Tertullian and Irenaeus, right?
Exactly, correct.
So that's why I say, all right, you want to go back to you want to go back to, you want to go back to pre-Constantinople and stay with Ephesus? Okay, man. It's like someone telling me I want to stay with Justin Martyr. In fact, I've met them. I'm not exaggerating. In fact, I don't know if he's listening. You have some Protestants. What's that guy's name, guys? The guy who denied the Trinity, who's now a Trinitarian. He doesn't. Crystal Sala. I had a discussion with him when he was trying to insist that he wants to go with the Christology and the Trinitarianism of Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, and Tertullian, where they say that the Son wasn't always the Son, though he always existed. And I said, well, historically, because these men held that view and they were proto-Trinitarians, they were Trinitarians, they are Arians, I cannot condemn you as a heretic if you want to follow that view.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Thank you.
Let me show you. Tertullian is often misquoted to show that he believed there was a time in which the Son did not exist. He did say that. But that doesn't mean he believes the person who becomes the son is a creature. Here, let me show you. Justin Martyr articulated the same way. Here it is. I'm going to get you the link. Go watch the session I did on this. So he wanted to now go back to this Christology. He wanted to go to ANTE, Nicene Christology, the way those Christians articulated the beginning of the Son. They were all proto-Trinitarians. I hope you guys are listening. Learn about your history. Proto meaning they did not think the Son is a creature or the Spirit is a creature produced from nothing or out of created elements. They affirm the Son and Spirit are uncreated because they are in God and come forth from God and therefore not part of creation. Everyone with me there? So they are Trinitarians. You want to make sure you get it. Now, let me send you the link in private chat. So here it is. You see the private chat. Now, everyone listening or you guys asleep? I don't know. I don't see the comments working. All right. Now, since Christology evolved to address Arius and Eunomius and Eutychus, these names. Darn it, these names. Anyway, they had to now adopt new language. They had to now involve new vocabulary, come up with different ways of expressing this truth. So now you won't find, after Nicaea, any of the Trinitarians talking about the Word being begotten out of the Father to be the Son at that moment before creation. They speak of a timeless generation. Does that mean Justin Martyr was heretic? No. Does that mean that later Christians were unfaithful to the tradition? No. They're all affirming the Trinity, but they're groping in the dark how to best explain it to address their enemies. So that's the same thing the MIAPHYSITES are doing with those who want to accept Constantinople, right? Or Chalcedon. Well, you guys accept Constantinople. I'm sorry. I meant, yes, I meant before Chalcedon. See, this way. It's Nicaea, Constantinople 381, Ephesus 431. They had another meeting in Ephesus to go over, what was it, the Saint Cyril of Alexandria's anathemas. Then came Chalcedon. Those who stop at Ephesus say that those who went on further and adopted new language, they're now being unfaithful. No, they had to address new concerns, new objections, new opponents, and they had to now come up with more precise ways of explaining how one person is both God and man. Similarly to what they did in Nicaea, they had to express Christ's beginning from the Father in a more precise way than Justin Martyr or Origen or Tertullian or Irenaeus did. So if I were to say, well, those who come after Ephesus and embrace the theological vocabulary of Chalcedon or Second Constantinople are in error, then I'm going to have to say all of you guys are in error, not just Catholics and Eastern Orthodox. You MIAPHYSITES, because you're unfaithful to the way they articulated the beginning of the Son in the 2nd century. So I should join Chris LaSala and go back and speak of the Word residing in God, and the Word wasn't always the Son. That's what you're basically arguing for. Your argument proves too much if we follow this train of thinking. You get my point?
Yes, very clearly. Thank you.
Here, Tertullian, he says it. He says there's a time in which the Son was not. Here, there was, however, a time when neither sin existed with him nor the Son. He became the Father of the Son. This wasn't just his view. That was the view of Justin Martyr, Irenaeus. Now, Tertullian's not a saint, but Justin Martyr, Irenaeus are saints of the church. So are you going to say now they're wrong, or are you going to say you're wrong because you're not articulating it the way they did? But that's your argument. You know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you just said it's more pure and more historical. Well, you're not pure and historical enough.
Right,
Because
and yeah, thank you
beyond
for
the 2nd century, right?
correct. Mm-hmm.
So why don't you go back to the 2nd century and say, yes, Tertullian, Justin Martyr, There was a time when there wasn't the Son. The Father becomes the Father's Son when the Word becomes the Son. Would you articulate it that way?
No.
But wait, you want to go history, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to go with whatever is the most clarified and
Oh, no, you
according to
don't
the
do
church
that.
correct view.
No, you don't want to say most clarified, correct you? Because that's when they're going to come and say, why do you think we have to go beyond saying one composite nature and hammer the fact that he is divine and human, and he does things in relation to the human nature that would not be applicable to his divine nature? No, I don't think you want to say more clarity, because the later view brings more clarity.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with that, Sam. So that's
All
actually
right.
thank you for in all this information. This is a wealth of knowledge. You opened like a whole like dimension that I have to now diligently study. So I really appreciate it.
All right.
I want to know if miaphysis is
No,
if it makes sense, if it's sufficient enough in comparison to the latter councils, or
Miaphysitism.
is Diophysitism more doctrinally sound, if
Well,
you will,
brother,
in comparison?
you ask me a position that's not fair for me to answer. Why? Because obviously I'm in the
Mm-hmm.
church that speaks of DYOPHYSITISM, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me to then sit in judgment of MIAPHYSITISm is not fair, because in reality, at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
you know what determines whether you accept one view or another? You know what determines it?
What determines it?
The church you belong to. In other words, if you're Catholic, you'd be arguing for Diophysitism. If you're Eastern Orthodox, you'd be arguing for Diophysitism. So a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
people who argue for one particular articulation of how the two natures work in one person are really simply going with the church that they're baptized into or join affirms. Because if you didn't believe what your church taught, then you wouldn't be part of it.
Right, and yeah, so I was a cradle Armenian Orthodox, and of course, I sincerely and reverently love my church,
Amen.
in every way, shape, and form, doctrinally and otherwise. I just want to make sure that I'm obedient to Christ as best as I possibly can be. So I just wanted to
You're doing good, brother.
understand Christology as sharply as possible, not to like necessarily leave a communion or anything, but just to increase in understanding and hopefully to be a blessing to others.
Amen. And you will be.
Yeah.
If you're humble and teachable, God will give it to you. That's why, believe it or not, remove
Mm-hmm.
the apologists. If you go and study the scholars of any particular tradition, the highest levels, those who are scholars in the fields, be it Catholic or they're Oriental Orthodox, they will tell you, if you go to the top scholars, that's not my opinion, they'll tell you that in reality, when it comes down to it, we all affirm the same Christ, same Trinity, which is why the scholars don't condemn one another, whether one is Miaphysite or the other is Diophysite, because they understand, though we're using different vocabulary and terminology, we're arriving at the same conclusion, and we have the same triune God and same Christ. It's the people, how do I say it? Because I'm a part of that people. I'm in the lower level. I'm not a scholar. It's we over here on the lower level who, in our zeal for our church, want to defend our church to the expense of condemning other churches to hell. We're the ones who are causing the problem.
Correct. I agree.
We're the ones causing the problem because no. Armenian all the way, baby. In fact, Adam was Armenian. He spoke Armenian. Do you understand? That's the problem.
Yeah.
The
Right.
lower level, me, I put myself in the lower level. I'm in the lower level, me, because I'm not a scholar. I'm not. Anyone thinks I'm a scholar, may God disabuse you of that deception. I'm not a scholar. The scholars who study the original languages, whether Syriac, Aramaic, Arabic, Greek, Coptic, or even the Armenian language, the scholars, right, And they study the languages in the original languages of the writings. They don't read translations. They read the original language of the authors. And when they look meticulously, they all end up concluding, even though we're using different terminology, we are basically arriving at the same Trinity and the same Christ, which is why you won't find scholars condemning the other view as heresy or to hell.
Correct. Yes.
So we're the problem. The people on the internet, we lower people that think, no, man, because they said one composite nature, and if you then change it to, well, two natures in one person, then you're unfaithful to tradition. But then where does it stop? Because then I can say, okay, well, you're not going early enough. Go earlier, go to the 2nd century Logos apologists and start speaking the way they did, that there was a time in which the Father was not the Father, the Son was not the Son, but the Father became the Father to the Son when he brought the Word out of himself to become his Son. It's right here. Here, Tertullian. That even before the creation of the universe, God was not alone, since he had, within himself, both reason. See, this is Jesus. He's saying logos, because the word logos can mean reason, it can mean logic, it can mean word. He's saying Christ was the reason within God, and God reasoned within himself. So reason and God were conversing, showing that even in God, he's a distinct person. That reason was then uttered out of himself. He then summoned him out of himself through his mouth, so to speak, metaphorically, to then use him as his word to create. And that's when he became a second, right, from him, where now you can see he's distinct from him, and that's when he becomes the Son. And he quotes Genesis 1:3 to show when God said, let there be light, that's when the Son was born out of God. So you want to go earlier because you want to go to more ancient and more pure. Well, you're not pure enough, you're not ancient enough. Because you stopped at Ephesus. No, go back to the 2nd century.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Thank you for all that elaboration, Sam.
Now, by the way, brother, you know I'm kidding.
This
We're not
was
going to go back.
tremendous insight. So,
By the way, brother, you know I'm kidding, right? Well, I'm not saying we go back and talk the way they did 2nd century. Things advance, things move on.
correct. Yeah.
So hope that helped you, brother.
Yeah, it definitely did. And so I'm going to just continue researching the fathers and their, all the writings, and
Well, do me a
stay as faithful as I can.
But here's what I want you to do. Read Justin Martyr, read Irenaeus, read Tertullian, read all the 2nd, 3rd century apologists, meaning 2nd century, 100s, start of the 3rd century. Watch how they explain the Trinity. They don't explain it the way later Christians after Nicaea and the Christians at Ephesus did. In point of fact, if they were to look at how other Christians articulated it without knowing their historical context, then don't be surprised that they would also be leveling anathemas against St. Cyril. But there's a context. Oh, I see. So if Justin Martyr was living at the time of Arius, then he would be completely in agreement with the Trinitarians and their articulation at Nicaea.
Yeah, excellent points. Thank you, Sam.
All right. So you got it, brother. God bless you.
Yeah, thank you so much. God bless you, Sam. And have a good one. Thank you.
All right. So, geez, God, you got to get out of here, right, brother? Because you've been barking too much. You're stupid heresy. So get out of here. All right. Did everyone understand what my point was, right? That doctrinal development, what I call progressive illumination, that as time goes by, new challenges arises, forcing the church to now seek the Spirit to go deeper and come up with more precise ways of articulating ancient truths. That's why people are like wondering, well, how come that you never decided to jump on board MIAPHYSITISm? It's not because I think it's wrong. It's just because I understand this reality. So for me, the truth of a position isn't whether later generations are articulating the same ancient truths differently, because the question really is, are they still faithful to the ancient deposit and are building on the ancient deposit, or are they departing from it? Is that clear to everyone? Or did I put you to sleep? Because that tortured me. Everyone got it or no? Because I got to bring up the next people. Because you guys look like you're bored and I'm boring you. Am I boring you guys? Because I'm boring myself. Yeah, Chuck and Duck, brother, brother, can I ask you something, Chuck? Are you a lonely person, brother? I love you, Chuck and Duck. Do you have like daddy issues or mommy issues or something, brother? Because I keep seeing that you have to comment and chime in and make yourself heard. I don't know, it's because you need attention, Chuck and Duck, because if you do, we'll bring you on and let you speak for 15 minutes to get love and affirmation, because you are simply reiterating what I said. So I don't know why you're reiterating it unless you're trying to impress me with the knowledge that you don't have. So which is it, Chuck and Duck? Guys, look what he just said here in my Rumble. Astaghfirullah. I have problems with people who do this. I'll tell you that logos can mean reason. It can mean rationality. It can mean logic. That's where we get logic and all, right? And then they'll come and say the same thing I said. Okay, Chuck, you impressed me now. You want me to send you Mike Winger? I love you, brother. I love you, Yep. But let me know, Chuck. If you need attention, I'll bring you up, brother. Because, my autism OCD kicks up when people chime in. Yeah, but brother, it's okay. I love you, brother. It's okay, man. No, brother, it's okay. I mean, it's your world. You can come and take over because, I want you to feel good. I want you to feel loved. Can someone send a rose to Chuck on Rumble and on YouTube? Send him a rose. Say, we love you, Chuck. By the way, Tony, keep praying for Tony, guys. So divine mercy, you liked it, huh? The articulation? All right, that's good. Keep praying for Tony. He's here today joining us. He's going to have to undergo treatment for stage 4 cancer. Pray God gives him perfect health, remove the cancer to see his son grow up, right? His 8-year-old son. Pray God will keep me healthy, remove obesity so I can be healthy enough to see my daughters grow up. So pray for Tony. We love you, Chuck. You're a good man, Chuck. I don't care what your wife says about you, Chuck. What's your background, Solitude? What's your background, Solitude?
Hello, Sam. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. What's your background, Solitude?
Ex-Muslim, Sam.
Hello, Sam. Let's go. Yes, I can hear you now.
So basically, ex-Muslim, right? I
All right, speak a little
believe
louder.
in the Trinity. I believe Christ
Okay,
is my
speak
Lord
a
and
little
Savior. So we get that out of the way.
Speak a little louder, brother. Astaghfirullah.
One second, sir, because I can't hear you right now. I don't know why. Sorry, 1 second.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
I'm kind of stressed, so I don't want to mess this up.
Auzu billahi Muhammad rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Can you hear me now? I'm hearing.
So I'm here.
Hold on. Myself through your computer. Let me see. Hello? Yes, I'm hearing myself. For Allah, astaghfirullah. Auzu billahi Muhammad. Your computer. Let me see. Hello? You're going to have to do something, brother, with this, because we can't have a conversation like this. You're going to have to get off the YouTube channel and just listen up.
Sam, so I don't interrupt the flow until I fix this. Sorry.
You're going to do what? Auzu billahi Muhammad rajim. What's your background, YouTube believer?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's your background? What's your background?
Ex-Muslim Christian.
2 ex-Muslim Christians with sound issues. What's going on?
I want to ask a simple question. Can you hear me?
What's going on?
Well, I wanted to ask a simple question. Hello?
Yeah, what's going on?
Well, Sam, I watched a lot of your debates with Shabir Ali and with
I only had
Daniel.
one, so I can watch a lot of them.
Well, you had a debate with Shabir Ali. I
Only
watched
one.
that.
Said, I watch a lot of debates with Shabrali. I only had one.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I watched a lot of your debates, like the one with Shabir Ali and then the one with